All right, so let's talk about setting up the development environment. First of all, we'll have for our middle tier, we'll need Java, and you probably already have it installed on your machine. Download and install the JDK 8. You can download it from Oracle. It might ask you to open up an account with Oracle, and go ahead and download the JDK. Make sure that when you run it, it's available from your command line. Look at the if you run Java dash version, that it tells you what version. It doesn't have to be this exact version, right? But probably you'll get a much newer version of there, which should be fine. We're also going to need MAVEN. Anybody played around with MAVEN? Right. So MAVEN is a tool that allows you to compile and run tests and build your Java applications into jar files, and then you can deploy it on servers. So please download MAVEN from Apache, so that we can compile and run and test the applications. We're going to be using Heroku as our to host our applications, and Heroku. I mean, behind the scenes, Heroku I think uses AWS, but it just gives you a nice front end that allows you to very easily manage and administer your instances. It also can automatically detect whether your application is a Java application or an Angular application or React or Node, right? And automatically sets up the right environments for you. So it's really, really nice. It has a nice little front end. So please navigate to these articles and download for the client the command line interface that you need for Heroku. It'll ask you to log in and create an account and whatnot, and you'll have to download it for the type of machine that you have, either Mac or Windows, or I think it has also Linux. You will then be able to run the Heroku command line and log in. It'll use the same credentials that you used for when you created the account on Heroku. It's free. Also, the database is also free. The servers are free, as long as you stay within some limits, right? And it'll let you know whenever you are reaching those limits. Spring Boot. So for the middle tier, for the Java server middle tier, we're going to be using Spring Boot. So Spring Boot is it's a derivative of Spring MVC. If you've used that at work, perhaps it's a very easy low bar entry at creating Java servers, right? Just with a couple of lines, you have a running server. You can either install it from Mac OS by using Brew to install the command line interface for the Spring Boot command line interface, or you can use Ruby. You can point to that URL. It'll download the executable and install the Spring Boot command line interface. It's become very, very popular. I've seen it in quite a bit different projects that I've worked with, and yeah, it's well, that's what we're going to be using for the first half of the semester, right? For the middle tier. Once you have Spring installed on your machine, you can run the command line. You say Spring init, and then you can give it all sorts of dependencies and say whether you want a database, you want to have a web server, what do you want, right? If you say dependencies equal web, it'll download the necessary jar files and libraries to run a server and host HTML, JavaScript, CSS for you, and then you can give it a name for the application. For the name of the application, I would use the same name as the repository. Right, so if usually something like web dev dash fall 2019 dash your username dash server dash Java. Okay, so that'd be a good name. Here I have just myapp. You can very quickly, just to test it whether it's working, right from the command line, you can create a web app directory under the main, under source main. You create a web app directory. It has to be called web app, right? And then under web app, you can just create a simple index file and put maybe a simple h1 a welcome. Once you've done that from the root of the application, right? In this case, my app, You just use Maven clean install. It'll compile everything. It'll package. It'll create a jar file, and it'll put the jar file under the target directory. Right? It'll create a target directory, and it'll put your jar file in there, and you can run that right from there. You can say Java jar in that jar file. This will start the server. Okay, it'll listen at port 8080. And if you point your browser to 8080 index.html, right, you'll see your welcome. Right, so in like 15 minutes, you can have a running server on your machine. For the MySQL, we're not going to be using MySQL until maybe 3 or 4 weeks from now. But nevertheless, please start downloading these tools and start playing around with them. Make sure that they're working. Download MySQL Workbench from that link. Spring Tools Suite. So this is an Eclipse-based IDE that is already configured to run very well with Spring Boot. Although if you don't like Eclipse, IntelliJ will work just fine, right? You can just open the folder. It'll identify that it's a Spring Boot application, and you can just run it right from within from IntelliJ. Also, please download Node.js. We won't be using Node.js for about a month and a half, but nevertheless, please, I'd like to get through the pain of setting up this environment as early as possible. So you can install it right from Brew, right from the node from the command line using Brew, or you can go to nodejs.org and download the installable for your particular machine. Let's see what else. MongoDB, we won't be using this for 2 months, but again, I'd rather you start downloading all this today. Again, you can install it using Brew, or you can navigate to Mongo. Mongo will try to sell you a version of Mongo that you have to pay for it. They do have a community version that it's free, right? So search. You can just search for MongoDB community version, right? It's a free version. You can download and run it locally on your machine. So you follow these instructions. GitHub. Make sure you have an account on GitHub. You can use the school's GitHub, or if you, I prefer to use the real GitHub, just GitHub.com, right? And then invite us as collaborators. We'll be creating quite a few GitHub repositories, right? One that's going to host our Spring Boot server, another one that's going to host our Node.js, another one for Angular, another one for Vue, another one for React. So we're going to have a lot of Git repositories. Yes. It should be private. But I think students can have a private account. Yeah. I think there's a limitation on how many folks you can invite. But I think 2 TAs and myself should be enough. Okay. Yeah. So make sure you name your repositories the same names that you use for your projects. Something like web dev fall 2018 server Java, and then your username. This is just some example of adding your content and pushing it. You can then push it to master, and you can also push it to Heroku, and we'll look at that when we come back next Monday. All right.